We're going to start as soon as we've got a critical mass with us. So just give us a couple of minutes. Thank you. All right, well, I think we'll get started. Hi, my name is Jenny Luray. I'm the Senior Vice President for Strategy and Public Engagement at Research America. And many of you joined us online almost exactly 1 year ago when, with support from the Lasker Foundation, we launched the report, Visualizing the Landscape of Training Initiatives for Scientists in Public Engagement in the United States. And we are going to hear from three panelists who are doing fabulous public engagement work at their universities. But I wanted to provide some context about Research America's commitment to public engagement. After I do that, we'll hear from our board member, Claire Pomeroy, who is the president and CEO of the Lasker Foundation, and also from our senior fellow, Manuel Muindi, who will moderate the discussion. Research America has long made it a priority. And in fact, one of our strategic objectives is to build support for public engagement within STEM graduate training. And just for a little history, for the past 7 years, we've been funding microgrants for early career scientists to develop projects that take them into communities to connect with local policymakers, community members, K through 12 students, etc. And we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about the skills needed to do this well, and also the impediments that scientists face often from within their institutions to step out of the lab and do this work. The landscape report, which we published last year, I think I mentioned with support from the Lasker Foundation, but it was accompanied by the first ever database devoted to public engagement training for scientists. Fanuel oversaw this work. And while we found numerous offerings, workshops, fellowships, courses, we also saw how scattered and disconnected they were, and often university support was sorely lacking. With a better understanding of the landscape and with support from the Rita Allen Foundation, we convened a group of academic and foundation leaders to come up with actionable, concrete recommendations to move this field forward. And these recommendations are posted in the chat. We're committed to moving forward on the recommendations, and we're seeking funding to do so. In the meantime, one recommendation was to build curriculum that can be shared publicly. And we have received support from the Lasker Foundation to begin this in the form of microgrants. A call has gone out for these grants with a deadline of November 15th. Hopefully you've seen the call for applications, but if you haven't and you're interested, please let us know. So speaking of the Lasker Foundation, I am very pleased to introduce Claire Pomeroy. She is the president and CEO, and she's also a member of the Research America board. And as you can see from her bio, she is not only a highly published medical researcher, but also a highly regarded thought leader in both academic and philanthropic circles. So Claire, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then you'll turn it over to Fanuel, who will start our panel. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And I am delighted to add my welcome to all of you. It's great to see so many people joining us for this important panel discussion. As Jenny mentioned, science communication and public engagement are critical to the work we do at the Lasker Foundation. Our mission is to improve health by accelerating support for medical research. So we're all about science communication and public engagement. And so we were delighted to help fund Fanuel's work to create the interactive database of training opportunities that I think will be highlighted today. But As recent events have shown, we're clearly not doing enough. What we're doing right now is wonderful, like the work that we're going to hear from our panelists about, but we need to do more. Distrust of science, medical misinformation, it abounds. And since our future, a healthy future, is inexorably linked to good science communication and public engagement, we need to do more. I was pleased to be on the convening that Jenny mentioned to discuss public engagement. And in that report, which you have the information in the chat, but in that report, the real conclusion was we all have to be part of the solution. It has to be universities, faculty control the curricula, so it has to be universities, faculty, philanthropists, government officials. We all need to come together. And inspired by the success of Fanuel's landscaping project, we at Lasker saw the need to create new approaches to public engagement training. And that's really what led us to start the public engagement training content microgrant program that Jenny mentioned. Now, the deadline is in 3 days, so I hope you all have been working on them, but the microgrants will be stipends of $5,000 each. And what we really want is new ways to reach out to all of our key stakeholders. Everybody from students to patients to policymakers to industry to community groups, even the media, and find new ways to bidirectionally connect scientists and non-scientists. And that might be social media, but what we really want is crowdsourcing innovative ideas in this arena. So I'll finish up by saying that if we are going to realize the power and the wonder of science to make the world better, we have to hone our public engagement skills. We have to embrace innovative ways to connect with each other at home and across the globe. So we at Lasker hope that events like this panel, initiatives like our microgrant program, will come together to propel all of us forward to a healthier, more prosperous, and more equitable future. I am so grateful to Fanuel for all the work that he's done to enhance science communication training and public engagement. I look forward to today's discussions. Over to you, Fanuel.
Thank you so much, both Jenny and Claire, for that introduction. Welcome to you all again. I'm so glad to see it, and so many of you have tuned in. So I'm going to share a few remarks just to give you an update of where the landscape is right now, the dashboard in particular, and use that as a vehicle to introduce our panelists. So bear with me. Please do drop questions in the chat. We'll be looking at those and we'll be addressing them. If you're looking for links as well, I see people already dropping questions. Please keep those coming. We have people monitoring it directly as well. All right, let me just share my slides here. All right, so this is an update, and if you haven't had a chance to look at the last year, and it's actually amazing, it's almost a year and some change of dates here where we actually launched this dashboard, and then if you forget everything I'm about to say, the key thing is that it's still going strong. Okay, if you forget everything else I've said, it's still going strong, and that I'm so thankful to Claire, Jenny, and everybody who has made that possible. So what were we trying to do from the beginning? It's characterizing the underlying ecosystem of training and public engagement with science. The idea was to make this picture kind of more clear and crisper to see where the crevices were in this really emerging landscape. And so our guiding frameworks, we were looking at mostly organizations versus individuals, with a particular emphasis at universities, and using terminology about public engagement from the AAAS, and largely focused at the United States at the beginning, but now I'm happy to say that we have ventured broadly, and this was Claire's questions towards the end last time. And so we're doing that now, and we're getting inputs from people who are sharing programs really around the world. And so it's a big undertaking to looking at them and mapping them on this big map. And I'll be going through this very quickly because I want to get to the panel, so forgive me for that. So how do we do this? We compiled a lot of these programs were publicly available, looking at that information, categorizing it, which took really a long time. That was essentially our first year, qualitatively and quantitatively, and then adding them onto this visualization, this dashboard, if you will, which really came from the inspiration from the COVID-19 dashboard that the Johns Hopkins University had devised. And so I was inspired by that and figured, hey, can we create something like this for the training landscape around public engagement? So that's what we did, took it apart, individual programs, looking at who they're supporting, what areas, what content, where are they based, a lot of things to take apart. And so here's an example, like just to show you like what I was looking at. When you take a program and you break it apart into its component, you see so much. And in our panelists today, that's what we're going to do a little bit of that. You're going to get to see this live as we begin to deconstruct some of their initiatives to understand how they fit into this larger picture of what's going on. And do check out this program as well at Northwestern, the SCOPE program. Really wonderful. It's in the dashboard as well. And so this is what we ended up finding out. Lots of them, right? Look at this. It's just beautiful, right? And in fact, this morning I updated and threw in a couple of other new things that have come along and being activated, right? And so it's dynamic, it's changing. And that's what I love about this ecosystem. There's a lot of movement and growth that's taking place. And it's really exciting to see. So eventually a report was published, and this is available. It's in the chat. Please do go there, take a look. And the dashboard that was created, the link is also in the chat. Do play along with it. I find it interesting and fascinating as you discover new programs, and people can add and submit new initiatives that you would like to be included as well on there. There's a little button that you can click to add things on there. And so what really gets me going as well is that we're adding to this existing ecosystem of tools that are there, that were there even before our landscape, the various reports that have been funded by various other funders. And so we're seeing this ecosystem of support where funders, where students, other trainers, faculty who are trying to teach content in this area can begin to understand this animal, this organism actually that is here, that is emerging, that is actively taking place. So I wanted to take a few minutes here to share some of the updates. If you've never seen the dashboard, this is what it looks like. It's a one page. It has everything on there. It's responsive. I did have a video, but I was to shave some time. I won't play it now. But essentially, you have all the components of the program broken down into its components. So you can filter through different areas like the target audience to where they're based to the actual content type, where we use some of the published literature to try to tease apart what programs are actually training their audiences in. And that wasn't easy. It still isn't easy, but we try to do so to begin to cluster and provide a clearer picture on the underlying framework that are there. So this dashboard is live, and you see now it had quite a bit of growth this past year. It's been active, about 16% growth since last time when we talked to everybody, and a large clustering around science communication. So a lot of programs are just self-identifying as focused in science communication. You will see when you go on there that science policy is right up there as well. A lot of overlap with initiatives. But yeah, so in there you can take apart, but we ended up adding another layer, and this was something that we had started when we launched the dashboard. It's actually having conversations with leaders and participants. So going to them, actually traveling to some of these places, to Harvard, to New York, and actually hearing from participants and leaders, and you will hear from 3 of them today, what are they learning directly through the trainings that they're providing their trainees as well. So this has been this past year a lot of my work in doing these types of conversations, and I wanted to just show you a little bit of what that looks like. And so here is a conversation with Dr. Teping Picardo from the NSPN. Have a listen.
And so I'm curious, when you think about impact what is that key metric in your courses that you're looking for or hoping to see, and how are you tracking it?
Yes, good questions. We are developing a tracking system right now. We have that for our courses that are in a launch for the first time under my leadership. And so what are we tracking? The first and foremost, what we're tracking is, did you gain skills over the course of 6 to 8 weeks that you didn't have before? One, did you gain the confidence or the self-efficacy to go out and take action? And 3, did you go out and take action? Those actions don't have to be getting an actual job. They could be, did you contribute to your community? Did you go out and do a public testimony at your local city council room?
And we have over 7 hours of content that is now available, both on the dashboard and on the YouTube channel that Research America hosts as well. And the link is in the chat if you want to go to this growing content, because there's so much in there. And just to highlight one of those conversations that we had with Jenny Frazier from UCSF, getting over 10,000 views. And so there's a lot of interest and excitement as we doing these conversations. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it has taken me traveling all the way to New York, traveling to Harvard, and actually having conversations with practitioners. And so that's where it leads me to today. And I hope that going to provide some context for this. I'm very excited to be joined today by Bethann Garramon Merkle. She is an assistant professor of practice and also the director of WY Science Communication Initiative at the University of Wyoming. Also joining me is Christal Huber. She's a senior engagement program coordinator at the Connector, which is also based at the University of Missouri. And she is gracefully just jumped in at the last second, may I add, to replace Sarah Bassmer, who's the director of the Public Engagement Graduate Certificate at the University of Missouri. So we'll have a lot of content, a lot of tentacles there to tease apart. Christal, thank you so much for jumping in at the last second. Also joining us is Dominique Broussard. She's a professor and chair of the Department of the Life Sciences Communication at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, which I had the pleasure of presenting not long ago, earlier in the summer. And so I had a really wonderful time there meeting Dr. Broussard. And so I'm glad to see you here again to hear more about the work, the trainings that you guys are doing there. So the way this will work, we'll have each of the panelists spend about 5 or so minutes, talk about their programs, and then we will get into some Q&A, beginning with myself, and then we'll open it up to the rest of you all. So please use the Q&A function to share your questions. And this is a discussion, and so you'll have also some of the panelists here that are on board asking questions as well. So I really look forward to this Q&A. And so to just open us up, Bethann, now I welcome you to the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Let me get myself together here. Slide sharing. I am on a couple of screens, so pardon my. Okay, so very briefly, as we just mentioned, I'm at the University of Wyoming. I am potentially an unusual academic in this space. I had a pre-academic career in nonprofit management and community development, mostly focused around various forms of science communication, and then have kind of moved into the academic environment. And so I bring a lot of that experience with me. And what I'm really interested in is how we can kind of institutionalize graduate education to include a science communication training component, and then to, how to put this, to shift the attitudes in institutional academic environments to actually support this kind of work. So I'm going to quickly give you a highlight of a couple of the ways that we've been approaching that at the University of Wyoming. The very first idea here is that coursework in graduate education is one of the few times when we have a hold of graduate students, if you will, and so we need to take advantage of that time. We also know that most students are going to be taking the things that are required in their curriculum, and those are the things they're going to know about. And anything else that's external or optional or extracurricular is going to be very hit or miss in terms of whether they even know about it in the first place, whether they have the bandwidth to participate in it, whether they feel supported by their advisor or their lab or their program to participate in it. So integrating training into graduate education has been a priority of ours here because it seems to be the most likely way to actually connect with students. That being said, we've tried a lot of different things. One of our layers around this is that we shouldn't just be giving students opportunities to share science, although of course that's really vital. We also need to build the broader infrastructures that are fostering them doing science communication and recognizing that science communication is an important, robust, and very diverse field or set of fields of practice. So there's a really key element of what we're doing that's trying to help shift attitudes so that SciComm doesn't just get lumped in service and too often get seen, especially for graduate students, as kind of a distraction from their real science work. So we're doing a lot of work around that. And the way we need to do that is to use one of the core ideas of science communication, which is calibrating for our audience, right? So not just providing opportunities and training, but actually coaching graduate students and people who support them to make a better case for both the training and the opportunities, and then things like research, grant-funded efforts, the sort of legible outcomes of some of this work. So we're basically, trying not to be birds with our beaks tied up here, where we are trying to help graduate students and the people who support them at UW and beyond learn how to make a case for this kind of stuff, the work of it, the reporting of it, the research around it. So in a way, trying to institutionalize not just opportunities for research, but the science and science communication components of that, as well as more popularized and maybe more accepted outreach approaches. And so, of course, this is really hard. Like, we've done research here at our institution, and lots of you are very familiar with this. Inter and transdisciplinary work is not really well supported at most academic institutions, even though there's lots of administrative rhetoric supporting or saying that they're going to support it. So it can be pretty hard to fund this work, pretty hard to get folks on board for it. So what we found is, at least at UW, it's pretty successful to try to pull this into courses. And we are in the process of trying to map out a minor program across campus just based on the kinds of courses that people are offering on their own. And I'm going to show you a few of the different versions of things that we've experimented with here. So we have seen all sorts of manifestations of training on our campus, and I'm sure these are reflected in your database and everyone else's experiences too, but we've seen, and I've offered a lot of graduate level courses on all sorts of things, from science of SciComm to really applied visualizing science courses. We've done undergrad and grad merged classes that are really strongly project-based. We've partnered with local mural projects and the art museum, one-off workshops, serial workshops, and short courses that don't actually bear credit. We've interestingly found that those are very popular with students. And I think that that's something that we can look into in the future, why it is that these kinds of courses are potentially more compelling than credit-bearing courses. We've also established a free online self-paced SciComm certification, which has kind of two potential functions. One track is for folks who want some sort of guided training experience, and the other one is a way of helping people who do a lot of SciComm work make that work legible by they can submit a portfolio and we evaluate it for the credential. We have also worked pretty strategically with various funding and support efforts on our campus to give graduate students opportunities to teach and conduct research in these areas. So a lot of really dedicated training around introducing them to effective pedagogy around science communication instruction, and then building out a bit more of a culture of support for students actually integrating science communication research into their quote unquote regular science degree efforts. And our kind of forward looking stuff is that I just this fall with some collaborators got a nice big NSF grant to actually study our nationwide approaches to graduate level SciComm training, with a specific interest in how we can coach faculty to make the case for this kind of training at their institutions. And we are building out some new courses on campus that are really looking at why there's a huge gap in public trust in science. And that's probably plenty from me for the moment. Happy to talk more as we go along.
Thank you so much. There's so much in there to unpack already, but I will refrain from jumping in. And welcome aboard, Christal. Tell us a little bit about your efforts there.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I think I'm ready to rock and roll. So my name is Christal Huber. I'm with the University of Missouri, where we have a graduate certificate in public engagement. Just to kind of tell you a little bit about our department. Our department, the Connector, it's a little bit different. We're located in the Department of Research, Innovation, and Impact. And so what we do is we work with faculty members to help them with engagement efforts for the most part. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I personally create some low barriers to entry for faculty members to do outreach and engagement. But I do specifically like that Brienne mentioned the whole kind of getting away from the term outreach per se, whereas we're trying to integrate this fully with public engagement. And our graduate certificate is kind of a work in progress to reflect that as well. So we kind of had that same thought process of we really wanted to get graduate students involved earlier rather than later in this idea of public engagement. And it actually started as an outreach certificate. It was science outreach. But then our department actually works fairly closely with our extension. Since we are a Greenland University, we do have that extension programming, and that's kind of where I came from before as well, which kind of really helped us kind of tie into this idea of public engagement. We have certificate series that are available throughout our university, and that's kind of how we have it currently set up as, where this is a 12 credit hour graduate certificate program that's open to anyone and not just Mizzou students. And so that is something that is available and is constantly evolving. It starts with an essential to public engagement course that just about anyone can take. We have people that take that don't even necessarily continue with our certificate series, but kind of the meat of the certificate series is this integrating research with outreach. So it's 6 credit hours total, where it's basically kind of like an internship style where you're doing a practical application of applying your research in a public engagement setting. And that can look like a wide variety of things, whether that might be something more of like a science communication type route where we're dealing with maybe social media and webinars, or we've had like science fairs and things to those things that are developed working with a wide variety of audiences, from youth to adult audiences, where we're one-on-one engaging with those. And then typically there's a pedagogical course involved with that, or a science policy course of some sort. And one thing that is a little bit different about ours, we do it, it's an 8-week course, typically that's online, and we're focused on introducing different topics related around research and impact and public engagement. So we approach it from like the theory of engagement with our courses, and then we go from there, and we are kind of writing an engagement plan that hopefully they can apply throughout that. So we base ours a little bit more loosely on requirements of the NSF broader impacts because our office does support a lot of grant funding as well. So it ties into a lot of the NSF programming that happens because broader impacts are a component of those grant fundings that are required. So we kind of loosely base it around that. And we include tools and resources also from the Center for Advancing Research, Impact, and Society, which Sarah and Dr. Susan Reno are a part of that organization as well, which is a professional development organization that gathers like-minded individuals that are particularly working in this broader impact area that is NSF funded. So we do bring some components of that in as well. So like I had talked about, particularly our internship as well, that is a component of it. But we're looking at getting basically the individuals within this that are taking the certificate, just getting their hands dirty and kind of doing these different events. I'm going to skip through here real quick just to kind of tell a little bit too. We also provide some professional development for, I've mentioned faculty a few times as well on our campus. So we have our graduate series, but we do provide faculty development. A lot of this does revolve around grant funding, but we like to get them tied into the engagement they can do within that. So like some of the programs that I mentioned that we do that are kind of low barriers to entry, that we help them develop some of these public engagement and get them connected with partners, is like drop-in science fairs. We've had 1,000 attendees come for families where they develop different hands-on activities. We also have extra credit, which is a movie screening where they come and pop in and they talk about their research in that movie. So we create low barriers to entry so that they can continue to trial different things and then move forward with that. We are hoping to also, we're exploring undergraduates as to how to get them involved in these as well, so that we can, the sooner we can start them in understanding public engagement, the more likely they will include that within their career as they move forward as faculty members. So that's kind of a brief summary of what we have going on. So I'll just stop here and turn it over to Dominique.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for having me today here to talk about the projects, the programs we have at UW-Madison and not UW. When you said UW before, I was like, oh yes, University of Wyoming. We need to be careful with our, the way we use our acronyms here. So as introduced, I am a professor and chair in the Department of Life Science Communication at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I think that what's interesting for this program is that this department, that's actually a social science department, is located in the College of Agricultural Life Sciences. Our college has 16 departments. Out of those 16, 4 are social science-based. But naturally, because of our, our setting, we have a lot of interaction with a lot of life scientists and other type of sciences here at UW. And this is really important because to some extent, it does color the type of program we offer. And bizarrely, you're going to say, I'm starting by talking about an undergrad program. And why do I say that? Because we offer a Bachelor of Science in Science Communication, because we believe that actually talking about public engagement and science communication has ideally to start before graduate school, and to actually training the scientists of tomorrow is really naturally as they embark in the scientist career early on, even at the undergrad level, to understand that all scientists and all type of disciplines are working together to solve the problems of this world. And so our undergrad program is a 24 credit Bachelor of Science. That means that students from a wide range of different disciplines can double major. And as a matter of fact, 60% of our undergrad students are actually pursuing another science degree as they do that. And a lot of them actually continue in grad school later on, but we believe with a firm foot in understanding what it means to have meaningful public engagement and the theoretical and practical implication of the science of science communication. And linked to that, is our different masters and PhD. I won't go into detail, but we do have a number of STEM scientists after their PhD that come to get a master program in also science communication, science engagement. I won't, elaborate on the PhD. However, I will, also put a plug for undergrad certificate in science communication. Again, the same logic as I was telling you with our Bachelor of Science, that idea that those that are interested in STEM fields should think about, the importance of the social, ethical, legal, and dimensions even during their undergrad career, even if they will continue later on in other spaces, at least to have a strong footing in the importance of this kind of dimensions. 12 credits required for this certificate. Flexible course load lets students pursue their passion. And again, here we have visual communication. We have a wide range of professional skills in social media and science and so on. And I can ask, answer specific questions as far as the curriculum and the type of classes we offer. However, very important, one class that is required for this certificate is a large science, media, and society class that actually explains all, if you wish, the dynamics related to different public interacting with science in a wide range of settings. Lately, a lot of AI-related content, but obviously a lot of very topical issues that I discussed that are relevant to citizens of today. At the grad level, independently of those more formal master and PhD in social science I talked about, we have developed a while back a grad certificate in science communication and a PhD minor in science communication. So to some extent, these are the brothers and sisters of our undergrad in science communication that, by the way, was created 1 year ago and already has 300 students have signed up for it. So extremely popular, like the undergrad in STEM fields want also this kind of thing. I think we always think grad students, but the grad certificate in science communication also very flexible. 12 credits. I think there's a lot of parallels with what we heard before. Really allows students enrolled in any grad or professional program at UW to supplement the existing grad work. And I think it was mentioned before that it's easier for students to have something that can be part of the curriculum because sometimes, advisors in the scientific disciplines are not particularly open to integrate those kind of classes in the curriculum. I'm happy to say that with those minor and certifications that appear on the transcript of those students, we have seen no actually pushback. As a matter of fact, we have seen the opposite from very different scientific advisors as far as encouraging students to pursue this kind of trainings. So very successful. Particularly the minor in science communication, I think Fanuel was kind enough to come to talk to this group, and he can attest how eager they were to learn more about this landscape. But I would say that I would agree with people saying that those formalized ways to push for this type of training are really successful, at least in the academic context. And last but not least, we try to offer also like flexible professional courses and summer courses. We have online courses that are asynchronous in the summer and be taken by students, but also professionals looking for courses in science communication. And every year we have a fair number of scientists that are already working in different capacity in organizations outside of the academia that are taking those courses, as well as our professional courses that we open to anybody that's interested in fostering their knowledge and skills in science communication and science engagement. Here, you can scan to make an appointment and learn more. I'm trying to do my little pitch here, but I'm happy to share that we see this slowly but regularly growing and definitely having an interesting, complement to what others people do in the field. Thank you very much.
All right. Wow. We were just talking offline. My goodness, there's so much to unpack here, right? We can spend all day long, but we don't have all day. So I want to actually ask, there's a question in the Q&A there from Michael Bennett, and actually was going to be my first question as well. Thinking about, can each of you just talk about your local ecosystems, the institutional support, right? Who are you collaborating with? Who is supporting whom essentially to make your programs sustainable and keeping them going? Because you can imagine some people are wondering, like, how do you do it? Because there's you all have families of initiatives, right? So let's start with Bethann first.
Okay, so be perfectly honest, I think I mentioned this before we started the webinar, but the science communication program, the initiative at least, is something that extensive handful of us across campus. I think at one point when we founded it, we had about 17 different units on campus, including a number of kind of research and administrative programs, and then folks from a bunch of different departments on campus involved. None of them were an education group, by the way, Michael, like not in the School of Ed anyway. But we didn't ask anybody for permission, which also meant that we don't have any actual formal administrative support from the university. So this is a sort of force of will effort. And then my courses and my own research program are the things that I'm doing individually. But I'm a non-tenure track faculty member, and I did not get a startup like most of our faculty members. So it is also very, very bootstrapped work.
Yeah, and the bootstrapping is we had a lot of that. There's a lot of bootstrapping that's taking place. Christal, tell us a little bit about the local environment for you.
Yeah, so our, like I mentioned, our certificate changed too. So when it was outreach, it was actually in the Department of, or the College of Education in Teaching and Curriculum. And since our department kind of got pulled into that engagement focus, things changed. So it's housed in the graduate school, but technically I'm staff because I'm an administrative support to faculty within the university. So we have support from our Department of Research to do this because that is where we are housed. So that is important from that aspect. And basically, we do pull in people from across campus, though, and that's one thing we find that is important, is finding people that are working in these spaces as faculty and bringing them in. And that is, we do some instructional component of this is how you should be doing this. And then we bring in the people that are actually doing it. And that team tends to have the biggest impact. For us, we tend to find those people in our consultations. Since we are doing some consultations with grant work, we do kind of have a picture of, okay, this person is actually doing some really neat things and they got funded. So that is how we typically find our resources.
I see. Dominic, you just told us a whole milieu of offerings you guys have. How do you make it work?
Yes, so we're lucky enough that we have a Department of Science Communication that was created 100 years ago. So like, I think that setting is different. So what we try to do is double dip. So classes that are offered for, a bachelor's and master and so on can also be taken by people that want to join the certificate and the minor and so on. And then some undergrad courses, for example, visual comm undergrad course, like we offer a grad level for those PhD students to be able to actually tag along. So that means that there is, in the syllabus, you're going to have like specific grad component. So that means that you can, double dip and use the expertise of the faculty, but also to actually, help the students that are not just undergrads.
Yeah.
And we do have, like I would say, like at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, we're lucky to have something that's called the Wisconsin Idea, where we're supposed to promote engagement and a really big push for service learning classes and so on. So I think that we are lucky that the environment itself, compared to Bethann, is that, was, fruitful for that regard.
Yeah, and it differs, and this is what I've been finding as well. It differs from each place to place, and some have resources, some do not. And that's why we're trying to do these connections, right, to learn from each other. Jenny, I wanted to ask you as well, because you've been finding that T32s are a vehicle that some universities are utilizing, right, to bring in training to departments. Could you share some insights from?
Well, for those of you in the biomedical area, you're very familiar with the NIH T32, which is a training grant that all of the institutes give. The biggest chunk come out of the NIGMS. I've been invited to at least 3 different T32 retreats just in the last 6 months to do a session on public engagement, public policy, science communication. And the reason we've really focused on T32s as a way in, particularly for those universities that, don't have well-established programs and are looking for ways to educate more of their grad students in public engagement, is that, this is not a time when we could create a new grant program at NIH, right? So the T32 money is already there. There's also NSF money, the NRT program, and there's maybe some money in TIP that we're exploring in the new TIP directorate. So I think what's exciting and what we hope to do is to bring together T32 program directors from around the country to share information, share content, share curriculum. So folks don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we're starting to, hear from very senior faculty who really want to make this training available to their students. And that's important because as, I'm sure Bethann can attest to, and Dominique on the other side, my understanding, Dominique, is, you have incentives for your faculty around public engagement. So when promotion and tenure decisions come up, this is a credible component, and it doesn't sound like that's true at Wyoming. And frankly, it's true at very few institutions. So that's the other thing we want to work on. Is how can we help other universities learn from the Wisconsins to develop public engagement into that promotion and tenure decision-making process. Thanks, Fanuel.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Now, one thing that has kept coming up in my reading and also just talking to various leaders is evaluation, and thinking about how do you track the impact of your programs. If you look at the Dudo report, did a wonderful conversation with various science communication fellows, directors, and evaluation was up there, right? Whether it's getting funding to do it and how do you do it. I'm wondering if you all can just take a few minutes to just tell us a little bit how you're thinking about evaluation. If you have done so, what are you actually focused on? And just to share those insights. And Christal, if we can begin with you first.
Sure. For this particular certificate, so this is our second year of revamping. So we have not completely dived into our evaluation yet, but it is on our radar. So some of the things that we're particularly looking at are kind of like comfort level and confidence, within communicating those things. What we are currently doing is evaluating some of our actual engagement events, which can be a lot more challenging because those are on a larger scale. So two ways that we particularly look at our engagement events are, we look at it from support we provide faculty, but then also the public. Like, what are they actually, how do we measure the impact on the public in those events? So that is something that we are constantly developing. A lot of those public-facing ones have been fun to figure out because that involves kind of a lot of observations and those types of things. One thing that we are finding that is interesting is just the fact that connecting them to campus and understanding this is University of Missouri research. They may live in this town, but they may not realize that this is University of Missouri research. So that is one valid component, but hopefully I can give you more in the next couple of years on our particular certificate program.
Yeah, Bethann, so with the certificate, the self-guided certificate, right? Can you tell us a little bit, what are you guys evaluating? There are a lot of anecdotes, individual people sharing like, oh my God, this was life-changing or something. What are you guys evaluating from that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We're using a similar pre-post survey tool that I use in all of my SciComm courses, and it's a fairly extensive survey that's looking at attitudes, behaviors, and motivations around previous training, whether people in your professional environment support you doing this kind of work. Part of it is asking folks to write a science communication philosophy statement that they do at the beginning and the end of the program, and they do at the beginning and end of my courses as well. So we're getting a few different types of data streams coming in, and because it is a self-paced program, we don't have a whole lot of folks who have finished it yet, but we have a couple hundred who are in progress in it. And a graduate student last spring did a kind of an emotions analysis out of the pre and post science communication philosophy statements and what they said they got out of it. And I don't think we have quite enough of that type of data to analyze yet to say like, this is how people's emotions change, right? But we are definitely seeing that people are feeling like they are better connected to a professional community by a lot of this work. And that's been true in our courses as well. And I did share in the Q&A a couple of links to some of the other tools through our communication initiative that we offer, a newsletter and some things like that that can also help people better connect to the professional community. That seems to be a big demand. And we're especially seeing that from folks who are not entry level. Probably you all have noticed this in a lot of your interaction with other folks. So much of the training that we offer is to teach somebody to begin. And there is not a lot for folks who are further along in their careers, who are looking for a next step, because there is no clear next step for science communication professionals. Researchers, if you stay in the academy, maybe there's sort of clearer steps. And then for folks that like run all of this stuff, we never create programs for ourselves. So some of what we're seeing in some of the feedback that we're getting from all of these different things is that people at different career stages need really different types of support or community or interventions.
Yeah, and that actually brings up the question that Claire has brought up in the chat, and what I'm thinking about it to you, Dominique. You have a whole family of initiatives, right? And so how are you thinking about what's working, what isn't, and how do you, what data are you using, right, to make those decisions, and what research more broadly are you guys utilizing?
Yeah, that's interesting. And by the way, like, it's funny because Anthony Dudo was a student here and John Besley was a student with me. So it's like so small, like the whole thing. Like, yeah, but yeah, so those are good questions. And, you know, each time you talk about evaluation, you say evaluation depends on what you want to achieve. So what's your goal? And then you're going to evaluate in this context. So for us, since those are formal educational programs, like the evaluation is really, you know, like geared towards the learning outcome. So if we actually, one of our learning outcome in the minor, the PhD minor, is understand the complexity of science issues and how communication is more complicated than just outreach and so on. We have a bunch of learning outcomes. For us, is really in the context of the classes to actually be able to measure that the students have reached those. But I would argue that this is a little bit, you know, like simplistic, right? Because we want to go beyond that and we want to make the world a better place. So I think that what we try to do with the minor is when we have, you know, like establish a relationship with those students, each of us faculties that are involved, is looking at their individual goal. So actually try to define which person that goes to this training, why are they doing it, and what are they trying to achieve with this? Is it, you know, like, and I think we actually very often confound the goal of a program that actually translates literally the goals of the organization, whatever, without actually thinking of the goal of the trainee, which is at the end of the day who we want to serve. And so I think this is where we try to manage. And right now I have ended up being in 4 PhD committees in social sciences, genetics, and so on, because the student wants to, oh, actually, at the end of the day, I want this to be part of my scientist identity. I don't want to have just a little. And so that's something that I think people discover as they go through those trainings. And that's why I think it's very difficult to actually assess globally what a training program does. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, Jenny, get a hand up.
Thanks, Fanuel. My question is the experiential component of this. You know, so the work that we're talking about is really about how do you relate to folks outside of academia. And we know with a lot of skills, you need to practice those skills, right? Particularly those that involve interacting with other people. And so how have your programs incorporated experiential learning?
Yeah, can we start with Christal on that first?
Sure. So our biggest, since we do, at least particularly for this certificate program, since we have it's kind of like we phrase it as like an internship or problem hours, that is 100% experiential learning because you are developing a product. It's not just like, here's a hypothetical situation. You are actually going out and you are developing partnerships. And that is a huge thing that we talk about as well, is developing partnerships. because that can be an art in and of itself, is developing a partnership and working with specific audiences. So they are developing partnerships and going in and actually doing those programs. And then we are there as like a sounding board and to also provide advice and things as you're going through that component. So our, and I think that might have been, Dominique may have mentioned service learning earlier. We are starting to tie into that as well, since service learning is starting to be more of this experiential learning engagement focused. That is something that we're starting to tie into with like our undergraduate program as well. But for us, it is a key component of our certificate series is they actually have to get out and do a specific program and develop partnerships.
Yeah. So with time, yeah, Bethann, did you want to comment on that?
Well,
Um,
one thing I wanted to say is I think there's another scale of evaluation, and I really appreciate, Dominique, what you pointed to in terms of like what trainees want out of it. Part of what we're noticing is that if we don't influence how the institution counts any of this stuff, people aren't going to do it, or they're not going to be supported to do it. So some of our evaluation has been research projects to better understand the climate and the landscape barriers and opportunities on our campus and beyond. So I think I just wanted to throw that in. I think there are scales and then different types of people and different goals to focus on.
Is that something that you would recommend people do more, like kind of a landscaping locally, right, to understand the need?
I mean, I think it helps a lot if you have no idea what you're up against. you can run into a lot of friction and never fully understand how to do anything about it.
Yeah. So an earlier question, and I want to throw this to Dominique. With the faculty at your camp, can you tell us who are teaching all these courses?
Well, we have a department, so we have faculty that actually are, like researchers and social scientists in science, health, environmental, related communication. So they are teaching that. We have a mix of practitioners and the researchers, depending on the type of classes that are taught. But can I comment very briefly on Bethann thing, because I think she's right on. We did a huge survey of 10,000 scientists at land-grant university around the nation, try to find out what were the biggest deterrent to public engagement activity, training, and so on. And then the single most, exploratory factor was either, like the director of the lab or the deans, at an institution. So it's really an institutional problem that we have. Is not an individual problem. I can send it around if you're interested, but I totally agree that it's really like the institutional framework that is the most important thing. But yeah, sorry, I lost the train of thought.
No. That's actually a great thread, because I want to bring Jenny in on this point, because part of our working group, that's really, we spend a lot of time thinking about that, right? How do we institutionalize, right, this training that is just part of this process. So Jenny, could you just bring us home and just give us that broad view and what Research America and how you're all thinking about this and how to galvanize the various communities out there in the US?
And I want Claire to jump in too, because she has been such an important member and thought leader.
Yes.
With us. There's a lot of work to do. The folks that we're featuring them in part because you're very active in this space. And now what's interesting is we have, University of Wisconsin is in some ways maybe like the pedigree, the highly pedigreed, in this field. And Wyoming more bootstrapping, but that's okay, right? Every institution's going to be in a different place. And this is a small community, the coalition of the willing, as we like to call it. So how do we support each other? So part of what we have recommendations, which we've posted, would love your feedback on those, but we also really want to bring practitioners together on a regular basis. And that's, part of what has been, a really wonderful part of the landscape and the database is our ability to do that, because we can really learn from each other. We have a long way to go. This is really a culture change, normalizing public engagement within science, and Claire talked about it. so eloquently in terms of, trust and confidence, and we're certainly at a key pivot point where we can't take the brakes off. We need to actually, put pedal to the metal to continue that metaphor. So we're really in this, but it's because of all of you, those on the screen and those who are listening and doing your work. It's the community that is really fueling this. Claire, I want to bring you in before we close this.
Well, thank you, Jenny. And Research America has been a galvanizing force behind this, and the people on this panel and listening in are the community. But we need to make this a very inclusive community, one that reaches out beyond the converted. And I think we need to then instill this culture change in universities and in the general public writ large. And until we do that, these will remain too often one-offs. And so this culture change is what's important, and it has to start before university. So, from K through 12 on up, it has to be a continuous process where we capture the imagination and the interest and the support of the public. So thank you all for everything you're doing to drive towards that aim. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and this was a snippet, really, a moment in time where we're having this conversation. We're going to keep these going, and we go even deeper when we do the one-on-ones. When I have with trainers and program leaders, we get into the nuts and bolts quite a bit and learn so much more. So I want to thank all our panelists. Thank you so much for sharing the lessons you're learning, and we're looking forward to continuing these conversations. And for all of you as well, please, the links, we'll share them on this video, will be available on YouTube, and we'll put the links there as well so you can explore the report, the links to all these programs that were discussed. And so with that, thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, and stay in touch with us.